Texas football gets handed their worst loss in the Mac Brown era. Cam Newton is back, and we'll take a look around the NBA. All this and more coming up on College Crossfire.
What the hell's the rest of it?
Where's the rest of it?
Taylor's not even here to defend himself.
I'm so excited.
Hello, folks, and welcome into another episode of College Crossfire. We have an all Friday night football panel for you guys tonight. To my immediate right, we have returning champion David Paratano. David, how you doing?
I'm feeling pretty good. First win of the season, doing great.
All righty, and in the middle, we have Cameron Cabina, creator of Friday Night Football. How you doing, Cameron?
Doing great, looking to knock out the champion.
All righty, and last but not least, making his first ever appearance on College Crossfire, Thomas Bingham. Thomas, how's it going?
Pretty good. Great
All
to
right.
be here.
Well, let's get right into it with some Texas football, guys. On Saturday, the Oklahoma State Cowboys snapped the Longhorns' 6-game win streak in Big 12 play. Final score was 38-13. Case McCoy struggled at quarterback, throwing 3 interceptions, and the running game was only able to produce 151 yards on the ground. The Longhorns also had issues defensively, giving up 2 passing touchdowns as well as 2 rushing touchdowns. This was obviously not a pretty game for Texas, but what was the main point that you guys took away from watching this game? David, we'll start with you.
I learned that the defense hadn't fixed the problems that they had at the beginning of the year against Ole Miss and BYU. In reality, this was the best offense they've faced since Ole Miss. All the other offenses weren't capable of scoring the same number of points that this OSU team was, which is about 40 points a game. You played the great teams such as TCU, Iowa State. Those aren't quality wins. Teams like Oklahoma, that's a good win, but it's a rivalry game. Anything happened in those games. And
really, their only good win of the season.
Absolutely. So I think it's the defense is who we thought they were at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Cameron?
I mean, it's the defense as well as the offense. I mean, you can't. Case McCoy said it himself after the game that, hey, whenever your quarterback throws 3 picks in a game, you're not probably going to win that game. And I really don't think that this is really even a defense or a team that has changed over this season. I mean, the competition they've faced has been just horrendous. With Kansas, you played TCU, offenses that really have no power onto them, and they hadn't faced a team that was in the top 5 in passing yards in the conference until they played West Virginia. West Virginia nearly beat them at home, and I really don't see any difference between this team and what I've seen in the past. The biggest difference is the defensive line, and really when you're facing against offensive lines that give up one of the more sacks in the conference, you're going to see some big things change. I really haven't seen too much. I didn't expect them to get blown out per se, but that's what happens when your quarterback throws 3 picks.
All righty. Thomas?
Well, it was just one of those big games that Texas decided not to show up for. We've seen this over and over the last couple years. You go back to that Kansas State game last year. That game and the game on Saturday were both like playoff type games, and they didn't show up. And also, it's just continuous mistakes over and over and over, and that's their biggest issue. They're so inconsistent, and that's just why they're going to have another mediocre season like they have the last couple of years.
Well, Case McCoy has been consistently bad is the main thing. Outside of the Oklahoma game.
I don't mean to interrupt you, David, but can we all agree that we've been kidding ourselves this whole time with Case McCoy?
I don't think we've been kidding ourselves. I think
We kind of know what
I never had any faith with him to begin.
Okay.
What McCoy's been able to do, he's come through in very small-time situations. Against TCU, he had a couple of good throws on the sideline. Iowa State, he has an open pass to a couple of receivers. You have open passes from a quarterback that's supposed to hit him if you're playing for a university like Texas. And really, I mean, when you look at an offense that Texas has had the past several years, you haven't had an offensive star since Colt McCoy. So whenever you look at these games and you're looking in this gap that they've had, even without Jonathan Gray, they're still not a team that can be reckoned with offensively.
All right, gentlemen. Well, everybody's going to get a point on this one to start off. Moving out west now, in September, USC cut ties with former head coach Lane Kiffin following a 3-2 start and a blowout loss to Arizona State. Ed Orgeron was then named interim head coach to get the Trojans through the rest of the season until they would be able to perform a proper search for their new coach. But after going 5-1 in his first 6 games, and most recently upsetting Stanford 20-17 on Saturday, USC Athletic Director Pat Hayden is now being faced with the tough decision of whether or not he should permanently hand the job to Orgeron or whether he should start fresh and hire a new coach from the outside. So, panelists, has Orgeron done enough to deserve the job? for the long-term head coach at USC? And if you were Pat Hayden, what move would you guys make? Cameron, we'll start with you.
If I'm Pat Hayden, I'm not thinking about giving this job to him right away. I mean, you look at the teams that he's beaten in this 5-1 stretch. Cal 1-10. All the other teams. The only other team besides Stanford that had a winning record was Oregon State, and they're at 6-4. Not very impressive whenever you look at the grand scheme of things. And I really feel that Stanford, this was more of a stumble-up game for them than it was a loss. You look at what they did on offensively, too many turnovers. They actually had more yardage than USC had throughout the game. And whenever you look at Orgeron and what he's done defensively, you look at the game in Stanford, and you're not very impressed by what's been going on. And if you're looking at this as an athletic director and you're trying to hire a new coach, look at the grand scheme of where the NCAA is right now. It's ripe with very good coaches that would love an opportunity to go to USC. In my mind, Kevin Sumlin is a big choice and a big guy that you can send out and get a really good offer towards him. I think you can land him. I don't think you take this with Orgeron. I don't think right now he's giving you really enough reason to keep him.
Okay, ready? I like the point you made about Sumlin. He's a good name out there. Thomas?
I actually disagree. I mean, 5-1 record, turn around the season for USC, that's pretty good. Until he doesn't produce, that's when you look towards another coach. I say definitely bring him back for next year, especially if they're able to beat rival UCLA next week, a week and a half actually, possibly lead them to the championship game or upset someone from the Pac-12 North.
Alrighty, David?
He's winning. You can't argue with results. You're winning. You keep him. But if you can find a big name in the offseason, let's say maybe, I don't know, a Muschamp or or like you were saying, Kevin Sumlin. Maybe you can reel in Nick Saban, who's apparently dancing around everywhere. But if you can't reel in a big name to go to USC, you don't stick with some up-and-comer guy that no one's ever heard of. That's not the sort of person that comes to USC. So Orgeron is doing well there. You leave him in unless you can find someone that you know for sure is going to be an improvement.
Well, whenever you look at what USC is going to have the rest of the season, you're not going to see a very big game between USC and the rest of this year. So you go into the next season, and you're coming off into the next game.
UCLA is going to be a big game, and that's going to decide who gets a shot in the Pac-12 championship to play in the Rose Bowl.
And gets a shot. I mean, but then you go off and play Oregon, you see what happens down the line, okay? But the rest of the season, I mean, Oregon isn't even the team that a lot of people think that they were from the beginning of the season. I think if you go with the games against Stanford, you go into the next season, you keep this coach. You go into the next season, you have troubles again, you lose in the first couple of games, you wasted an opportunity to get very good coaches in the offseason.
That's if you can get a good coach in the offseason.
If you get a job offer from USC, from where are you not going to take that position?
Another big school?
Mike, if you're Kevin Sumlin, do you not leave Texas A&M?
No.
Okay.
All right, well, all good points. I think I'm going to give the point to David here. Moving on to this week's edition of Monday Night Football, brought some of the most excitement we have seen all season. Cam Newton led the Panthers offense on an 83-yard touchdown drive to give his team a 24-20 lead. The controversy came on the very next drive when Tom Brady led the Patriots down the field until time ran out on the last play of the game when a flag for pass interference was initially called in the end zone and then picked up and waved off to end the game. But guys, let's take a look at the bigger picture here. The Carolina Panthers have won 6 straight games and 7 of their last 8, and quarterback Cam Newton looking like his old Auburn self out there. Are the Panthers legitimate Super Bowl contenders with this team? Thomas?
No. Playoff contender, definitely. 7-3 going into the final stretch of the season. They're definitely a playoff team. Their defense over the last couple of years under their head coach has always been consistent. They finally have an offense. They got some pickups. They finally got Ted Ginn. They've always had Steve Smith. They got Cam Newton. Cam Newton's having a very good year, but not Super Bowl contenders. They haven't been tested yet. 5 out of their 7 wins have come out of or have been against under 500 teams. They got 2 games against New Orleans. In the final 6 games, that's going to test them. That's going to show us what they got.
That's a good point, Thomas.
It's all about being hot late in the year. You look at the Baltimore Ravens last year, they really weren't that great at the beginning of the season, kind of like the Carolina Panthers weren't. And so you get hot late, you get streaking, you get your team gelling together, Cam Newton getting real big, D'Angelo Williams, a quality back in the backfield. Maybe you get Kenyon Barner from Oregon starting to warm up towards the end of the year. I think they can make a run deep into the playoffs. Their big challenge is going to be Seattle late in the year. I think Seattle is the team to beat right now in the NFC, but I do think Carolina Panthers going to be tough to play later on in the season.
Okay, Cameron?
I think that Seattle is the biggest competition for Carolina at this point. The best thing that Carolina has going for them, out of the entire NFL, they give up the least amount of points per game out of all of them. Defense wins championships. Yeah. If you can hold that against a team like New Orleans in the playoffs, then you've got a shot. I mean, but whenever you go against Seattle, Seattle is one of those teams that has another defense that has in the top 5 in points per game and yards allowed. So whenever you face off, that's going to be a very low-scoring game in the playoffs. But if Carolina and Cam Newton can be in a situation where he can come through in the clutch in times like that, which he hasn't really had an opportunity to face yet in the playoffs, I think they've got a shot. But for me, I don't buy it right now. We'll have to see later on in the season.
All righty, well, I think I'm going to give Cameron the point on this one. Going to the next round, coming up next on College Crossfire, we're talking more Texas football, RG3, and we'll play a little buy or sell in the NBA. Stay tuned. Thanks for sticking with us tonight on College Crossfire. Before we continue, let's get a quick score update. We got David and Cameron with 2, and Thomas at the end, last but not least, with 1 point right now. So, guys, as we discussed earlier in the show, Texas football was embarrassed by Oklahoma State on Saturday. But good news for Texas fans, there's still a chance for the Longhorns to win the Big 12 title. Oklahoma State and Baylor face off this weekend, and all Longhorns fans should be rooting for the Bears because a Baylor win would set the stage for the December 7th matchup between Baylor and Texas to essentially be the Big 12 title game, assuming Texas is able to beat Texas Tech on Thanksgiving. So, guys, what are the chances that Texas wins the Big 12 title? And more importantly, does winning a Big 12 title save Mac Brown's job?
It's slim. Baylor's the best offense in the country, scoring over 61 points a game. Their defense is top 10, giving up only about 15 points a game, about maybe 15, 16. So it's going to be a tough fight if they can beat Baylor. But I think for Mac Brown to save his job, he not only has to win the Big 12, he has to win the Fiesta Bowl and get that big BCS win.
He's got a lot of work
later in the season. I think also, though, it comes back kind of like what I was saying about USC. If they can't find a big-name coach to replace Mac Brown, I do think he stays in the season, even if he loses the Big 12. If they can't find a high-caliber quarterback, or not quarterback, coach like Nick Saban, let's say, then he'll stay.
Okay, Cameron?
I think the odds of Texas winning the Big 12 are very slim. If you look at what against Tech, you're going to see the same kind of thing that you've seen against Oklahoma State. It's a high-power offensive power through the passing yards, and that's not something that Texas has handled very well. And you go up against Baylor. Yes, Baylor has 61 points against teams like Wofford and other teams, but you see them beat Iowa State 71-7, and that starts to get your attention. But yeah, they're one of the teams that don't give up very many points. But if you look at how many yards per game they give up, they are second to last out of the entire NCAA. So if Texas can find a way to get yardage in and actually score, there's a difference between all these teams that have been playing them that haven't been able to score because they aren't very good. I mean, they get the yardage, but they still can't score. So Texas has a chance when it comes to that. But whenever you see them against high-power offenses like Oklahoma State and possibly what you'll see against Texas Tech, I think they're going to have a lot of trouble. But as far as Mac Brown, yeah, I think if he goes through this rest of the season and gets that BCS win, looking at the team and the depth that he has offensively through your quarterback and tampered at the running back position at this point without Jonathan Gray and the defensive matchups that you've had throughout the season, that's a big win. I think he comes back if he ends up getting that BCS game. And hardly will you ever see a coach get canned after losing after getting a BCS game. So I think he ultimately gets it. But if he doesn't get it, I think you start over.
Okay, Thomas?
I mean, you have a chance until you're eliminated, and technically, yeah, they still have a chance to win the Big 12, but they're done. 10% chance that they could pull it out against Baylor, and you still got Texas Tech. They've lost 4 straight. We know that, but you can't overlook them. And I said before this season that if Mac Brown didn't win 10 games this season, he needed to go out. He needed to be fired. He needed to leave because this program really needed change. And there's a consistent struggle throughout this last couple of years, and that's why it's time for Mac to go. We need new energy. We need someone to motivate this team for those big games because I just don't see Texas competing against Baylor.
Alrighty, well, it seems like everyone thinks slim chance, but probably a BCS game saves Mac Brown's job. I think we're all on the same page there. Everybody's going to get a point to start this round again. Moving on to the NFL, the Washington Redskins are now 3-7 following a 24-16 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. And with each new loss, more and more pressure begins to mount up on the shoulders of quarterback Robert Griffin III. Second-year quarterback is coming off his second ACL injury and has not played as well as most people expected so far this season. Veteran wide receiver Santana Moss recently called him out, saying that as the quarterback, he needs to take more accountability for team losses. Is this season's performance just a sophomore slump for RG3, or will he end up having a disappointing, maybe Vince Young type of career? Cameron?
Okay, Vince Young would be so happy if he had the sophomore season that Robert Griffin had this season. I mean, if you call this a slump, this is a fantastic slump. If you look at what he's done this
3-7 is not very fantastic.
You're talking about the team. I'm talking about the player. I mean, if you look at what RG3 doesn't play defense. You see Washington
Scores a lot of his touchdowns in junk time, though.
Hey, but you know what? If you look at what Washington's defense has been doing, they have been atrocious when it comes to points, yards. They give up big-time plays in the late games that blows leads. What they've done defensively has been what's hampering Washington. If you look at what RG3 has done throughout the season, it is and whenever you talk about sophomore slump, he still has 15 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. If you look at that, Vince Young had 9 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. If you want to talk about slumps, this guy's definitely not in a slump. And I think he's still got a lot more to go. And to think that he's going to die out and fall out, there's no way. I mean, the way that he's performing with the team that he has and the opportunity that he has, he's doing a fantastic job.
Okay. Thomas?
I mean, we all know that the NFL is not really a rushing league, but RG3 is a different player. He's a more complete athlete, and I really expect him to adjust over time, rely on the pass more, lead his team. Yes, you mentioned the defense, Cameron, and it's just one of those things where, yeah, it's a complete team effort, and he's doing what he can. He almost came back from a 24-point deficit in the second half last week against the Eagles. So he definitely has the potential. If he has more weapons around him, he definitely will have a better career than most Russian quarterbacks, including our own VY.
I mean, he's got some pretty good receivers, and Alfred Morris is no chump at running back.
He's not.
Absolutely.
He's having a good season, too.
I had to disagree with you, Cameron. I do not think RG3 has had a good year. A 3-7 is a big statement for me. I don't care if he's not playing on the defense, but you're a leader of the team. You got to win games. That's how you're judged on how well you're doing, is winning football games. And the main thing we have to remember, though, is he's coming off a big knee injury. He didn't have the offseason to get better, to improve as a quarterback, and he's not really running on that knee real well. I do think this is a sophomore slump, and once his knee is at 100%, he has another full off season to get better, that he will have a good year next year.
All righty. Well, I think I'm going to give David the point on this one. I think winning is what you're really defined for as a quarterback in the NFL. All righty, guys. Well, it's that time. Moving on now. We're playing a little buy or sell. This time in the NBA, as usual, I make a general statement, and you guys tell me whether or not you buy or sell that statement. First up, the Lakers immediately become a playoff team when Kobe Bryant returns to the lineup.
Sell. They were barely in the playoffs with Dwight Howard, and they don't have Dwight Howard this year, so they're not going to make playoffs, in my opinion.
Sell. A lot of the problems that the Lakers have are defensively, and the players that have scored the most on opponents are power forwards. He doesn't play power forward.
Okay, Thomas?
They don't have enough leadership. I also sell, and also I don't believe in their down low men, Kaman and Jordan Hill.
Alrighty, moving on. Everybody sells on the Lakers. The Houston Rockets can win an NBA championship with their current lineup. Cameron, will start with you.
So, whenever you look at the teams that are in the West at this point, there's teams that have great point guards, great shooting guards, and what you've seen from the Rockets, they've got James Harden, but it depends on what Beverly does on a given night. Also, Howard, until he can consistently hit free throws, you're not going to make it very far in the playoffs. And I just don't sell this. I don't buy this team at this time.
Howard, fourth quarter liability with that free throw shooting. Thomas?
I also sell. Houston's a disappointing town. They always disappoint their fans. But regardless,
Come on, man. That's our hometown. Come on, man.
They need one more star. They do. They got Dwight Howard. They got Harden. They need one more guy. If Jalen Rose is right that KD will come, that's when the Rockets will win their third championship. Something will come up. Howard will want the ball more, but they won't win a championship. A consistent playoff team, but definitely not a championship team. They won't win a championship.
Another sell and calling out Houston. Donna, what do you think?
Down the road, sure, I do think they can down the road, but this year they aren't even the best team in the Lone Star State. We're forgetting that the Spurs keep getting better like a fine wine with age. So yes, I sell them this year, but I buy them down the road.
Alrighty. And the last one, guys, just real quick. Tell me, just buy or sell here. Minnesota Timberwolves big man Kevin Love can win the MVP. Thomas.
Buy.
Buy? Okay.
Yes. LeBron will not have the season he did last year.
So LeBron's still playing, and the big teams are the ones with the MVP.
Okay.
Sell. I mean, I think a lot of people are forgetting what most valuable player means. If you take a look at what the 76ers have done, Evan Turner is a man. He's the most valuable player out here.
Alrighty. Well, I think Thomas came with 2 bold statements on this one, so he's getting the point to take us into rapid fire. And coming up next, it is time for our rapid fire segment. Stay here. It's College Crossfire. Welcome back to College Crossfire. Before we move on to our rapid fire segment, let's get one final score update. We have David, the returning champion, in the lead with 4, and Cameron and Thomas trailing by 1 with 3. But anything can happen. It's rapid fire. Every question is worth 2. And our first question comes in the form of a classic Caption This. Check out this celebration dance from Seattle Seahawks defensive tackle Brandon Mabane. Take it. 2 points awarded for the best caption on this one.
I gotta go with the replacements. You gotta love a big man play 'cause you get a big man dance.
Okay.
Get in my belly, man. I got this score.
Belly flop.
I think I'm going to give Cameron the 2 points right here. He's going to take the lead with 5. And moving on, San Francisco 49ers linebacker Ahmad Brooks joins a long list of NFL defenders who have been fined by the league this season. He was flagged for an illegal hit on New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees and was then fined $16,000 for the hit after the game. A number of analysts, including Ray Lewis, have also spoken out against the fine, saying that it was unfair. This brings up the question, is the NFL taking player safety too far with all of these fines? Anybody jump in?
Absolutely. You look at what he does on the play. He has to cut around the tackle. There's not much else he can do to get on the quarterback.
No.
If he goes anywhere else,
you're
he can
wrong.
go
You're
down.
wrong.
He's
They
getting
need to go
knees to the
further.
head.
Need to go
So you're
further.
saying
Wrap them
you're
all
taking
in
it too far
foam.
with all
Too
the fines?
far.
No, wrap them in foam. You need to put bubble wrap on the ball. Everybody needs to be safe. Me padding the floor. It needs to be perfect.
Fine him. That was a severe hit right there.
What else is he
Bubble
going
wrap.
to do?
Fine him.
What else? No, what else
think
is
he
he
deserves to be
supposed to
fined
do?
for that?
What else is he supposed
You
to
touch
do?
another player, you get a $30,000 fine.
Drew
That's the way it works.
Brees is
You can't touch
5'11".
anybody.
What else is he,
Fine.
what else is he
6 foot.
supposed to do? Thomas,
That
tell me.
was wicked.
Tell me what else
flag
he's supposed to do.
football.
Flag football
What else
is
does he
the
do?
future.
What does he do
Flag
on that
football.
play?
This is getting chaotic in here.
Besides that.
Really?
should.
Could he
But
really?
Thomas, real quick. I don't think that was intentional. Did you see that and think
Yeah, I
that
did
was?
see it.
You
You
thought
didn't
that was an
intend to hit him?
intentional clothesline?
Please.
Sure. I
I mean,
played.
he's coming in sort of reckless, coming off a block. He's got to make the tackle somehow.
I've played NFL Blitz. You hit the X button to do the clothesline, and you jump him, and you take his money.
That's how it goes, right?
Alrighty. I think I'm going with Cameron and David on this one.
Oh, God.
Thomas, I just think there was nothing intentional about that one. And I mean, a $16,000 fine. I know these guys make millions of dollars, but that's a lot. I mean, any final words on the fine? Or?
I thought it was pretty threatening, but that was just my opinion.
Okay.
Take a
I'm always
clothesline at
threatened
you.
when I watch football.
Well, moving on to our final rapid fire. According to Tom Sorensen of the Charlotte Observer, Carolina Panthers quarterback Cam Newton celebrated his Monday Night Football win over Tom Brady and the New England Patriots by eating at Waffle House with his family. Yes, the same Cam Newton that makes $5.5 million a year decided to celebrate arguably his biggest win of the year and maybe even his career at the local Waffle House. So, panelists, the question is, if you guys had just pulled out a big win over Brady and the Pats, where would you go to eat for your post-game meal?
Golden Corral. They got a chocolate fountain. You can stick a steak in a chocolate fountain with some bacon wrapped around it. It's perfect. Come on, chocolate fountain. It's fiscally responsible. You put the money in the bank, you get the chocolate
I
fountain.
mean, you had me with Golden Corral, but then you said steak and bacon
Steak
with chocolate
and
over it?
chocolate. It's perfection wrapped around awesomeness.
You really are a Texan.
Yes. It's a heart attack on a stick. It's Beautiful.
Cameron Thomas?
I'm going to Gaddy's. I'm going to Gaddy's because I go and eat whatever I want. I get to go watch the highlights of whatever.
Or you
chocolate
could
fountain?
get a Gaddy's pizza delivered to you.
No, man. I
Oh,
got
dear
to go in
goodness,
there and
this is
watch.
commercial.
Hey, then I get to go and play NFL Blitz in the arcade room.
Okay.
Raising Canes. I love cane sauce.
Heck is that?
What is
Two.
Do they have a chocolate
Maniac
fountain?
meals. That's how I would celebrate.
Is there a chocolate fountain?
So we have Raising Canes. But tell me a little bit why.
Oh, cane sauce makes it all.
Okay, the cane sauce does it all
What
for
is
you,
this, a
Thomas?
commercial? What are you doing?
So we got Raising Canes.
Four canes.
There's no
right
love
now.
for the chocolate fountain on this show.
Fucking awesome,
You people are
Kane.
heathens. Heathens.
You know, I really like these answers. I think you're eliminated on this one, David. Just because
fountain.
you're such a Texan.
It's
Steak with bacon and chocolate on it.
You throw on a roll and you got a sandwich.
You might as well fry it and then put chocolate
That's the
on it.
next step. You give it to the guy behind the counter who's making the sushi that was from a dumpster, and you throw all that on top. It's perfect. It's food.
All right, I think Thomas is going to get the points for this one. That is going to be.
Who's ever heard of raising?
That is going to make
haven't
it
either.
Thomas 5, Paratano with 6, but Cameron is going to come out on top with 7 here.
No chocolate.
Really,
fountain.
really great effort by everyone here. And
right.
Cameron, we have time for 45 seconds of FaceTime. I'm hearing from my
45
producer.
seconds?
Go for it. Whatever you want to talk
Okay.
about.
Well, I'd like to give a shout out to all these guys helping me out with Friday Night Football throughout the season. Glad to close. Hey, can we get David Paratano in this FaceTime here? All right, this guy. I'm gonna miss this guy. He's gonna be graduating soon, so you get to be a part of this. It's all right.
I feel
You can be
special.
here.
Thank
You can be
you.
here.
Thank you.
Hey,
Also right
but
here.
hey, enjoy y'all's Thanksgiving, because I'm gonna enjoy mine. Be safe. You got it.
Alrighty, folks. Well, that's all the time we have for you. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of College Crossfire. Fortunately, we will not have a show next week because of the Thanksgiving break holiday. But you can catch us back here in 2 weeks for our last episode of the semester, and it will be our honorary senior show. But for everyone in Master Control, the studio, the panel, and myself, good night and have a wonderful Thanksgiving holiday. Waffles get in my belly. It's College Crossfire.